Hi, my name is Zach, and my stories come from a very small town on the coast of Maine, Bristol Mills, and they all happened on our family's small horse farm. So we live in, I don't want to say the middle of nowhere because it's really not, but we don't have many neighbors. And we have sort of a medium-sized piece of land with lots of woods and lots of fields. And we have a house that was built at the time of the Civil War, so it's about 165 years old now. And needless to say, I've experienced a lot growing up. But for the purpose of this video, I wanted to share 3 smaller stories. I only call them smaller because out of context, they probably don't sound that terrifying. But for the strict fact that they literally happened to me, and because they are so banal, I have to share them. First one was when I'm about, I want to say maybe 15 or 16. And we have a landline at our property. And one of the tricks we used to do growing up was when it was time to feed the horses, and this was before, I didn't have a cell phone until I was like 18 years old, so there was no communicating on our farm that way, and we didn't communicate through walkie-talkies, but we found out, and I don't know how we did, but if you call your home phone, so your landline, from an existing landline on your property, it'll do this sort of ringback tone. So instead of the standard like ring ring as if someone outside the landline would be calling in, it does this sort of like do 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 do, which we would use as like a paging system. So on our property we have a phone in the horse barn, in the tool shed, in the chicken barn, downstairs entry room, downstairs living room, and then upstairs. 6 phones, 1 landline. The point being, one time I was home alone, and it was, I want to say in the middle of summer. That's the other thing. All these stories happened in the middle of summer. So yes, we're on the coast of Maine. Yes, it's basically the middle of nowhere. No, we have no neighbors. So whenever it was time to feed the horses, my dad would just call the landline from like one of the phones inside, and whenever the do-do-do-do would page, basically, whoever was near the phone would just pick up, and my dad would just be like, time to bring the horses in, can you start feeding, or you have to leave for swim practice now, like your mom's leaving, like time to go, those kind of things. So one time I was home alone, and I had just come in from feeding the horses and the chickens, and I was walking into the kitchen to make dinner for myself. And there's a phone right by the kitchen door in the wood stove room, and the paging ring back do-do-do-do rung. Just as I was walking by or through the door, and I froze. Because the only way you can make this sound is if you are calling your home phone from one of your home phones. It's the only way it works.
Are you there?
So I froze. And I often get creeped out when I'm home alone just because there are a multitude of things that have happened throughout my childhood that just freak me out. Also, my dad's really good at ghost stories and loves to scare us. But I had just come from the horse barn, so it couldn't have been someone outside because I had just come from the chicken barn as well, and I have to walk through the L, which has our tool shed. So there was no one there that I could see. Basically, the point I'm getting to is that the only way that could happen is if someone was inside my house. And I was home alone. So there was no one using the phone that I just walked by. There was no one in the living room because I could see from where I was standing. That leaves one phone upstairs, which is in my parents' bedroom. And still frozen as I'm running through this in my mind, I quietly grab my keys off the stand, which is where that phone is. I grab my keys off that stand and I just quietly exit and get in my car and drive to the end of the road and wait at the fire station, which is, my dad's a fire chief, so I go inside the fire station and of course no one's there, but I was waiting until my dad got home because I was not going to be anywhere near that place. But in my little freak out, I realized that my parents were at a dinner and weren't going to be home for multiple hours, and my sisters were at sleepovers. And so I went back home, and I don't know how I did it, but then I realized that maybe it wasn't a person. And maybe it was something else. So that's my first story, highlighting that it's like the banal things like that are so commonplace, but there's no explanation. I mean, I was terrified more than the many times that I've heard footsteps in the middle of the night in the attic, which really does happen, and that sounds so cliche. But I have no explanation. The only way that ringback pager tone can even happen is if you call from one of our phones. And I know that spirit likes to communicate through technology as we as society are advancing through the technological boom right now. And that's not something I ever really, it didn't strike a chord with me, because I'm like, why would they try to communicate through technology when spirits who came before our time had no sort of clue how to interact with these objects? But then I realized it's electricity, it's energy that they're manipulating. So I don't know who it was. There are many people who died in my house over the years. At one point it was used as a surgery of sorts, and the floorboards, I shit you not, in my bedroom are painted oxblood red, because it wouldn't, if there was ever some sort of spill during surgery, it wouldn't stain the floorboards. Dad told me that when I was like 8 years old. Fast forward a couple years, and now I am home for the summer. I just graduated college, so I am 23. It's the summer of 2015, and I am at my desk, broad daylight, maybe 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm working on my computer editing photos. And all of a sudden, behind me, I hear the most incredible, impeccable shatter of glass, just and I like jumped and froze, and then I just look behind me, and I have a jar of sea glass that sits on the windowsill that had leapt off on its own and shattered on the floor below. Actually, it landed on a cast iron grate, which I used to like let heat up upstairs. It's a very old house. Before you say the window was open, no windows were open. That's the thing that like set me off. No cats were upstairs that day. I was so terrified I actually called my friend, and I often call her whenever these things happen, just so I feel like, honestly, I've had so many things happen that I feel like there's a negative energy in this house. That I just want some sort of record, so I always call this friend and be like, this happened, like, so yeah, no cats, no windows were open. I was across the room, just working on a computer as still as could be, and the windowsills in my house are gigantic. Definitely nothing like modern, or what's the word? Modular. Not like a modular like 2-inch frame, like a substantial like 4-inch like big clunky like shelf for the windowsill. And this jar of sea glass comfortably fits on this shelf. I've had it there for a very long time, and it's a big sizable jar of sea glass that I've collected over the years. And just broad daylight, 2 o'clock in the middle of the sunny afternoon in the middle of summer, leapt off the windowsill and just shattered on the ground. So another sort of like banal activity, but that literally happened, and there is no explanation. I didn't feel any creepiness after it. It just... And so for my last story, in grade school, so I think it's 6th, 7th, or 8th grade, around that time. And my family was downstairs, we're all having dinner. Quiet conversation, and all of a sudden we hear, it sounds as if like a giant mirror has fallen off the wall and just explodes on the ground and shatters. And I remember specifically my mom like snapping her head and like looking over at my dad. And my dad, like, he's like a giant, like 6'4" muscle dude, like he's the fire chief, like he doesn't get scared of things. And he just had this like look on his face, like quizzical, like, oh, that was cool. And my sisters and I, who've experienced things over the years, are like, And so my dad gets up and goes to the kitchen and grabs a butcher knife. It's really weird to see my dad like do something like that. And he goes upstairs, looks around, and can't find anything. There's no vase that's fallen. He checks all the rooms. Nothing from the outside has shot a window out. Not that that would happen. We live in... That wouldn't happen. No paintings have fallen off the walls. There are a couple mirrors upstairs. There's a vanity in my parents' bedroom. None of the mirrors have been broken, nothing. But clear as day, around 5 o'clock at night, 6 o'clock at night, we're having dinner, and just this insane, like, beautiful, like, should be recorded and like used in films for like a crashing glass sound effect. It sounded like someone took a baseball bat to a bunch of wine glasses and just shattered them right above us in the upstairs. And just came back downstairs, put the knife away, and sat down and started eating. And my mom's looking at him, and he's like, nope, nothing, can't find anything. Let's just eat. And we never talked about it, ever. I have like no memory of ever addressing that again. But yep, those are my 3 short stories.